Hi, I'm Skip Nipper. Welcome to Skip's Corner, the podcast where I tell you about not only Nashville's great baseball history and traditions,
shot to right, a one-hop liner,
but certainly about its past. And you will hear a little bit about its present and future, too.
Yes, he can, and makes the waist-high catch.
There are great stories about Tom Wilson Park, Herschel Greer Stadium, Sulphur Dell, and the players, coaches, and fans who love everything about baseball. And every once in a while, you will get to hear from a special guest who will share their fondness and even passion for the great game.
The high fly ball down the right field corner, going way back, hits a lead-off home run.
Today's Nashville baseball history subject is, get ready for it, the Chinese University of Hawai and its baseball team in 1914. And I'll just let that sink in a minute. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what this team has to do with Nashville, and I know you know I always talk about Nashville's baseball connection, and it's because there is one. I've been watching all season long, really, the Southeastern Conference baseball games, and especially this past weekend, the last weekend for regular season games and qualifying for the SEC tournament has been on the line. And I'll tell you, Southeastern Conference baseball is king. And although I'm glad to support local college baseball, Trevecca, Lipscomb University, Belmont, well, and even schools outside of Nashville, such as Cumberland University in Lebanon and Vol State in Gallatin, I have my own connection to the Vandy boys since my dad first bought season's tickets to their games, and I've continued to go along with friends. I have been interested in viewing the Vandy Baseball Fact Book this week, which lists historical information over the course of the university's existence, at least as far as baseball games go. The latest media guide I can locate online is from 2022, and I have no idea if there's a printed version, but it just hasn't been digitized. I'm sure there is one. And looking back over previous seasons, it came to my attention that there were holes in the records for a few years, especially 1909 through 1926, at least from the media guide that I was looking through. And I thought that was unusual since I have come across summaries and scores of games during several research attempts at a myriad of Nashville baseball subjects. But Vanderbilt comes across often, and I can't say specifically 1909 through 1926 that I've recognized anything out of the ordinary, but I'm sure it was reported in the newspapers at some point. And it just takes some research and writing to document those games to be able to include them in a printed document. So I've wondered what I could do to fill in some of those blanks. And although it looks like a daunting task, and I know it is, with no particular year in mind, I began with 1914 because I ran across an article about a 1914 team. And not only could I locate a schedule not always adhered to due to several circumstances such as weather conditions or train travel and the sort, it was a starting point. And actually, it was an ending point too, and here's why. Let me begin by reading the 1914 schedule pre-printed before the season started. March 18th through the 21st, the Nashville Volunteers, that's the Southern Association team. It was not unusual for the Vols to play local college teams, Cumberland and Vanderbilt, in their own preseason games. Then a week later, March 28th, Cumberland at Lebanon, which was a scheduled doubleheader. April the 2nd and 3rd, University of Tennessee at Knoxville. April the 9th, the Nashville Volunteers again. April 10th and 11th, the University of Michigan, a doubleheader on the 11th, so that would have been 3 games. April the 15th through 16th, the University of Georgia at Athens, and the next 2 days, April the 17th and 18th, Georgia Tech at Atlanta. And then the Commodores would return home on April the 24th and 25th to play Cumberland on Dudley Field. April the 30th, May 1st and 2nd, Sewanee on Dudley Field. And then May 8th through 9th, the University of Tennessee on Dudley Field. And then here's the one that really got my curiosity. May the 18th through the 19th, the Chinese team of Hawaii. Now, wait a minute, did I read Chinese team of Hawaii? It certainly seemed to be an oddity, certainly because no team I'd ever heard of before, and I had to do a bit of research, extended research, if you will. And I read this line. The faculty and also the board of directors of the Chinese University of Hawaii have given permission to the baseball team of the institution to tour the United States in 1913. A cable message was immediately sent to Nat C. Strong in New York, and he will arrange the schedule. It is expected the Chinese will play Yale, Harvard, and Princeton next year. Now, that 1913 date that's mentioned there, I think the Chinese team had actually started in 1912, so this would be after that, be ready for the 1913 season. And what I was talking about with Vanderbilt was for 1914. But let me explain who Nat C. Strong is, that name that I just mentioned. He was best known as a booking agent for the East Coast. He was a New York-based sportsman. He served as an officer with the Brooklyn Royal Giants and the New York Black Yankees, the two black ball clubs in New York City at the time, and he wielded considerable power in black baseball. He was a white-haired, blue-eyed promoter with strong-willed and dictatorial skills, and teams could not get booked in New York unless they went through him. And he was not liked by other owners, and here's why. He demanded 10% of their part of the gate in addition to his usual share. He also invested in strong white semi-pro teams in the area and was a part owner of the Brooklyn Bushwicks, the Bay Parkways, and the Cuban Stars. And aside from baseball, he was a salesman for the Spalding Sporting Goods Company and owned the World Building in New York City. In 1906, he had become the secretary for the National Association of Colored Baseball Clubs of the United States and Cuba, which began play in 1907. And as best I can tell, he was white. Well, the Chinese team from Hawaii began to play games in 1912, and Strong secured 70 games for the all-Chinese, that's in quotes, all-Chinese aggregation should they decide to tour the United States again in 1913. And they did. It was estimated that their tour would comprise approximately 50,000 miles. The party included 15 players and was supported by Chinatown business interests in Honolulu, as well as the Hawaiian Merchants and Advertisers Club of Honolulu. And the reason was to pump up mainland tourism and investments in the islands, as well as erect a cultural bridge between European Americans and Chinese Americans, or so it said. The 1912 and 1913 baseball squads largely consisted of players of Chinese ancestry, although several athletes, such as, I'm not going to get these names right, I promise you, Buck Lao Tin, Vernon Ayal, Ken Yin Chun, Apal Kaul, and Land Akana also possessed indigenous Hawaiian backgrounds. And by 1914, the year that the team came to Vanderbilt, fielded several players possessing Japanese and indigenous Hawaiian ancestry. Well, the young ball players crisscrossing the Pacific to the mainland did not go to the Chinese University of Hawaii, I found out. There was no such institution. It was concocted by one or more of the Hawaiian promoters of the trip, and the team's management encouraged the fiction that baseball fans at Stanford and Penn State were watching a college team in action. The team management wanted to schedule college teams and believed to do so would be impossible unless mainland colleges were persuaded that the Hawaiian visitors represented a college. In fact, there was no University of Hawaii in the islands until 1920, and it wasn't until a few years before, 1917, after the Chinese Hawaiians stopped playing their mainland games, that the College of Hawaii had its first baseball team. Now, let me go back to 1914 and Vanderbilt's 2 games with the Chinese team of Hawaii. With an overall record of 7-8, I think it comes out a little better than that because I haven't been able to put the pieces together to give the full final scores of a couple of those late games like Sewanee University of Tennessee, but they're 7-8 up until then. As best I can tell, on May the 18th, 1914, the Commodores and their visitors played an 11-11, 10-inning tie game that was stopped due to darkness. And the next day, on May the 19th, 1914, Vandy lost 4-1. I have looked but cannot find a one-loss record for this touring team, but I can find a report of 5,500 people attending a game they played in Berkeley, California. And after that game, it was reported that 20,000 firecrackers were set off by fans in the stands. Now, their season must have been successful, if not for their record, but for their success in their mission, since after a third season touring the United States, by December of 1914, Nat C. Strong was at it again and already planning another tour for 1915. Now, if you want to know more about Vanderbilt's 1914 season, give me a few more days. Be sure to visit baseballinnashville.com, and I'll post the story for you to read, including the games against the Chinese University of Hawaii. And finally, if you want to see what one of the jerseys that they wore may have looked like, Ebbetsville Flannels sells a replica jersey for the team. And you can go to ebbets.com, that's EBBETS.com, and search for Hawaii Chinese 1914 jersey. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Nashville Baseball History. I'm Skip Nipper. If you have something you'd like to comment on or give me a suggestion, you can write to me at 262downright@gmail.com. You certainly can find me on Facebook or Instagram. I'd love to hear from you, but I'm always grateful that you listen. Thank you.